Houston Weekend Calendar feed.
Please host this window to the country's most diverse music scene of the river.
The great John Steinbeck once described Texas as a state of mind, an obsession, as well as a nation in every other sense of the word. Texas is a huge compound of power and wealth and force and attitude too. It's a frontier state with a frontier history and mentality. It's one of the home states of the American military-industrial complex. And it's the home base of mission control for the American space program. Those of you who remember the Apollo missions will remember the most famous line, "Houston, we have a problem." It's also the home of the most powerful man in the world, a man for whom I've been developing a reluctant admiration. A man to whom the word cowboy is no insult. So here, at Global Mission Control HQ, we thought we'd take a long look, not just into the heart of Texas, but into its mind as well. Is Texas really the state that we're all in? And should we have a problem with that? Texans can't very well deny that the cowboy is at the root of their identity, and that this ethic is at the heart of their character. I'm going in search of some genuine Texans to discover what it really means to be a cowboy.
All right, here we go.
And where better to start than at Fort Worth's annual rally and rodeo. Texans say Fort Worth is where the true West begins.
That's just a ride around the park for that cowboy.
My first task is getting kitted up. In Texas, it's better to be a drugstore cowboy than no cowboy at all. Good morning. How are you?
Gene Lee, let me take a look at your foot and we'll see what we can find that might work for you.
Elephant.
In the front of it.
That makes me sad, I'm afraid. I love these. I feel twice the man I did when I came in here.
Now, boots are supposed to make the man.
Who's supposed to make the man? Well, I hope that's true of you.
It's kangaroo and anteater.
How fabulous. Ridiculous. It's a beauty. But it also has to conform to my wallet size, I'm afraid to say.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm beginning to feel,
Feel Western.
feel Western and very masculine.
Right. Well, that's kind of the cowboy way.
No, I'm beginning to feel my oats a little. How often can one say that? Well, I've got the cowboy starter kit, but now I need to get inside the hearts and minds. So I'm off for some advice from a well-loved and rather unusual cowboy. A Texan Jew who's now running for governor, the singer and writer Kinky Friedman.
We don't go to porno picture shows. We don't swap our wives with our neighbors. And we keep our kids away from Mexico. And I'm proud to be an asshole from El Paso. Aye, place where sweet young virgins are deflowered. Am I being rude, mother? You walk down the street knee deep in enchiladas, and the wetbacks still get 20 cents an hour. Them old wetbacks still get 20 cents an hour. Aye! Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The inner Texan is where I may need some work.
Well, you're not an attractive young man, okay? Let's start with that. You make a damn good Texan. You're close already. But these people trying to tarnish the image of the cowboy really bothers me very much, because the cowboy and the cowboy spirit is what the world's all about. These are the people that did everything, while the other people were participant observers of life. It was the cowboy, that went that one extra mile,
Do you care that in the rest of the world it's used as a synonym for someone who kind of talks out of the side of his
No,
mouth?
it's not. That's bullshit. Cowboy's a great word. Cowboys know no race or no color, you know. They live close to the land. They're like Gandhi was a cowboy, Jesus was a cowboy, Mandela was a cowboy, and George Bush is a cowboy. They probably wouldn't even like each other. It'd probably be Lord of the Flies situation if you got the four of them together. But they all have the cowboy spirit.
The notion of Gandhi and Bush sharing the cowboy character seems weird. It still seems weird when you go to the Fort Worth gathering and find out that the cowboy life has been assimilated by the Texas tourist industry. I used to watch a lot of cowboy films when I was a kid, and all the cowboys were white.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, that was just the way they were portrayed. We were cut out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Spanish that brought the horses and cattle to the Americas. They came through Central America, into Mexico, and on up into Texas.
So really the Hispanics were cowboys first?
Yes, they were the ones that worked the cattle.
What is the cowboy ethic, would you say?
Fair play, know the difference between right and wrong, try to help your fellow man, stay traditional, believe in God, believe in our country. I believe that's a cowboy tradition. At least it's my tradition.
But not looking for a fight where
No.
you can avoid one.
But if you get in one, win that damn thing.
And a lot of people think that Texas is, especially now with the Texan president, I think Texas is kind of shoot from the hip, quick on the draw, sass me, see what happens kind of attitude.
Well, let me tell you, most all the press says that Bush, Blair, and all of them have cowboy mentality. You know something, being a Texan, I'm sure glad they got cowboy mentality because they're my kind of folks.
What do you think about having a Texan in the White House? You can tell me. You're not throwing your hat in the air or anything. I can see that.
No, I'm not.
Even his critics concede that Bush has adopted the cowboy appeal to great political effect. One of those critics is the famous Texan liberal Molly Ivins.
You can see in his personality 3 distinct strains of Texas culture: religiosity, anti-intellectualism, and machismo. And the machismo comes both from the Latin culture and from the cowboy culture and from the football culture, and there's just a lot of it around here. And all 3 of those strains are very attractive to large groups of voters.
For all his idiosyncrasies, Kinky Friedman is a descendant of an often overlooked Texan tradition. The tradition of liberalism, populism, even radicalism. What will your main planks be in your campaigns?
Well,
as it plays out?
Against capital punishment. I'm also for gun control. I do not, personally, I do not carry a weapon. So if anybody plans to shoot me, they better remember to bring their own gun. The governor can't do anything. I can commute one man's death sentence, if I like him, you know, or I can declare a county a disaster area. Beyond that, the governor can't do anything. So to pretend that he can is ridiculous. Well, you know, this has been a disaster. Personally, this might be an amusing interview, but it's been just a sea anchor to my campaign. One interview has sent the campaign into a
spiraling into the crapper. Although the Capitol building in Austin was deliberately built higher than its model in Washington, Texans generally prefer their government small. In Texas, the role of governor is limited by law. There's no state income tax, and there are probably more guns than voters. The Constitution mandates that the legislature meet here for a paltry 140 days every 2 years. When George W. Bush ran for the presidency in the year 2000, he hoped to replicate this idea for the United States, make it into a country of low taxation and limited administration. Of course, it hasn't worked out that way, so now he's had to evolve a new attitude for the era of big government and nation building. And that attitude is partly derived from a martial spirit, which justifies 21st century warfare, but looks back to the early 19th century.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, we'd like to welcome you to the Alamo, the cradle of Texas liberty.
The Alamo is the essential moment in Texan history. When Texas was a province of Mexico, a war broke out between a small group of colonists and the Mexican Empire. Though the Texicans were annihilated at the Alamo, they won the wider war, and Texas became an independent republic for a decade in 1836. Some things in Texas are small, including this little building that symbolizes the fighting spirit fundamental to Texan values today.
As children in San Antonio, where we grew up, everybody goes and they visit the Alamo. And at that age, you're taught that that was a great battle of Texas, and about 100 and some odd Texans stood up there until they died and stood up for their principles and for independence.
These men truly made the ultimate sacrifice for freedom.
If you went out and you went into the street in Austin or San Antonio and you took a survey of people and you asked them the question, who won the Battle of the Alamo? I would put $100 on the fact that most people would say Texas. Texas won the Battle of the Alamo. Even in my head now, it's hard to separate the idea that at the time of the battle, it was actually part of Mexico and later became independent. I think we tend to think that it was already Texas and we were fighting another country and they were invading Texas. Well, really, they were just coming to another part of their country to try to stop an insurgency. But all of that kind of gets lost in that old myth.
Today, the Alamo is a shrine to the men who died here. These humble plaques list the names, some of them Mexican, and the homelands of the 179 martyrs. You have to come here yourself to understand the continuing emotion that Texans feel for the story of their nationhood.
Describing what it means to take care of the Alamo is difficult. It's something we feel in our heart and in our soul. It's taking care of the past for future generations. We love the Alamo. We love Texas.
The Daughters of the Republic of Texas are the custodians of the Alamo. They take their job very seriously.
As the smoke cleared and the sun rose, each and every defender now lay dead. It was truly out of the ashes of a defeat, a victory began to emerge.
Even the brass plaque at this shrine describes what happens as something of a legend, but those who like to believe in heroes like to believe that on this spot, Colonel William Travis drew a line with his sword in the sand and said anyone willing to die for the freedom of Texas should cross that line and be with him. And out of 180 men, 179 took that decision and paid for it with their lives. Some revisionists like to say now that it was just a white settler revolt against the Spanish Empire. Others say it was a constitutional revolt by proud Anglo-Saxon and Scottish yeomen against an oppressive regime. You can take your pick about the legend, but it will continue to prove that the Texan attitude will always be defiant, and it will always say that it doesn't care about public opinion or power or anything else. Bush borrows effortlessly from this reservoir of Texan spirit.
He's not going back down, and that's where he comes from, and that's a Texas way. We drew a line in the dirt at the Alamo. We got our asses kicked, but we sure drew the line.
We will smoke them out of their holes. We will get them running, and we'll bring them to justice. Dead or alive, either way.
On 9/11, I knew that Kathleen Carter, my sister, was here. My concern was for my sister. My other concern was for the Alamo. I didn't know what they were going to do. It was a horrible, horrible day. I asked Kathleen, and she said, the Alamo will not close. She kept it open. That day, we had more visitors than the usual 13,000. She said people came from everywhere, and they would just sit on the grounds, or they would be in the shrine because it made them feel that everything would be okay. And that's the way the Alamo is for Texans.
Whenever you choose to leave here today, We ask only that you take the Alamo with you. In your hearts.
I don't think the forces of jihad know enough about America to target the Alamo, but it was sufficiently revered to have Ozzy Osbourne banned from San Antonio for urinating on it. This chap seems to be risking arrest just for looking like him.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember the Alamo.
So the rest of Texas will know and remember the Alamo. An extraordinary feature of today's Texas is the manner in which it domesticates and contains its proud frontier attitude in an ordered and sterile suburban environment. Where have all the cowboys gone? Here is where they've gone. Well, this is the manicured bliss of Plano, a sort of new town development on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. And when you look at them, you can see the emerging potential Republican majority. A solid area of white, conservative, Christian, clean, neat, respectable, professional people. I feel I could be very happy here.
I think the spirit of the new frontier in Texas comes from the fact that it is such a new state. Neighborhoods just mushroom and grow overnight, and everyone is here from someplace else. I would say 80% of my constituency is Republican, so I feel that I probably mirror a lot of their thoughts and their ideas. Less government is better government. There shouldn't be government handouts for those who can take care of themselves, and that in order for business to thrive and prosper, government should stay out of their way.
The rest of the country is being Texasized at a very rapid rate here. You know, our state is a classic case of low tax, low service. You don't pay much in taxes and you don't get hardly anything. Good roads.
For most Texans, this is a road that at any rate leads to the football stadium, the main weekly ritual for all self-respecting citizens. And these are Senator Shapiro's constituents. For Texans, high school football is another name for community, where families convene every Friday night.
Next, ladies and gentlemen, we have Courtney Dunham.
Tonight is special. It's the homecoming game, where the homecoming queen is crowned. It's a kind of cross between a popularity and a beauty contest.
Jordan is the cheerleader, head captain, and involved in her church youth ministry. And we are proud to announce that the 2003 homecoming queen is Lauren Finnegar. Congratulations to all who were nominated, and especially to our queen.
I detested all sport at school, and I still do. But even the non-sporty type can find some consolation here.
Football is important because it's a story of life. It's getting knocked down and getting back up.
The University of Texas, one of the largest schools in the country, they closed down the film program because it lost $30,000 one year. The same year, they spent $100 million renovating the football stadium. So that tells you a lot about sports and priorities versus the arts.
At one level, Texan football looks like the moral equivalent of American beef, hearty and pumped up and with a hint of steroids. But actually, from the college level down to high school and up to the big leagues, it's more like the moral equivalent of gladiatorial combat. When a Texan team leaves to play out of state, said one famous writer, it leaves like an army with banners. Still in all, there's a sexual subtext to this as well, with the homecoming queens and the rangerettes. No Texan scandal is really complete without a violent bit of behavior on the part of a male player or an outbreak of pregnancy among the cheerleaders, which may well be why the most famous pornography film in modern America is Debbie Does Dallas. Football in Texas is so ruthless that in Houston, The mother of one cheerleader recently attempted to butcher a rival's mum.
I think football is king in Texas because we like to compete. Fundamentally, it is a competitive state. And if you look at all the sports out there, it's the one that combines competition and a little headbutting. Those two things Texans like. They like to compete and they like to butt heads.
As I came close to finding out, this competitive strain in sport mirrors that of business. Just down the road from here, Bush made his business reputation and $15 million from his investment in a baseball team, the Texas Rangers. This led many to forgive him for 3 calamitous failures in oil drilling. In Texas, the myth of an individualist business spirit is based on the old traditions of ranching and oil. The truth is that government exists to serve business. Here in downtown Dallas, the multimillionaire oil man Boone Pickens is proud of his political connections. Even this notorious wildcatter disproves the legend that Texas business is risky or raw.
Texans do have that image of, you know, shoot from the hip, you know, and it's fast moving, and you know, I think that's the way we appear sometimes. I'm not so sure that's exactly how it is.
I think there is that wildcatting tradition of the Texas millionaire who did kind of strike out on his own. He did get lucky maybe with one oil strike, and you know, that kind of myth still survives. But I think the modern version of that is very opposite of that. You know, these people, I'm just a good old boy who got lucky. They're using the same tactics, kind of hard business tactics that any corporation is using. They're just still wearing boots and a hat, just like our president is. It's ridiculous. It's just a veneer. But the truth is they're predatory, really mean, anti-competitive. I mean, just like, they will kill you, you know, to get what they want.
The rancher may remain symbolic of Texas, but symbolic is the right word for a group that now makes up a mere 3% of the population.
You know, everybody's migrated to cities. That's where the money is. Like Sid could be, when he got out of college, he could have went to work for a meat sales outfit or agriculture. Probably made $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, but he chose to go into ranching.
The Smiths represent 3 generations of a ranching family who first came to Texas in 1858.
How old are you?
99, and 3 more months, I'll be 100.
Longevity runs in the family, I guess. What do you remember from your days of ranching?
Mostly hard times.
We're proud of the hard times that my dad and his father went through for us so we can live a better life.
The rancher nowadays leases more land than he has of his own, just because the cost of land is so high. There's just no way to pay for it with the ranching occupation. And it's so tough that you have to find other ways of diversification to make a living. You know, you don't try not to gripe about it, and when times get hard, you just go on with it.
Even old oil millionaires can no longer make their money in oil. Boone Pickens now makes his fortune in stocks and shares and in new 21st century ventures like water. While commitment to the land keeps families like the Smiths away from the action, in the big city, Boone Pickens can make a living without getting his hands dirty.
While we've been sitting here, the commodity fund has made about, it's probably between $4 and $5 million. So that's pretty good.
But this doesn't discourage the Smiths from their belief in the American dream or their belief in their Texan in the White House.
George Bush, I think he's the most honest president and dedicated to the country that we've had in a long time.
It's good to have George W. Bush in the White House because he knows what the ranching industry is about. You know, he hadn't had probably the hard times that we have had, but he knows, you know, the trial and errors and the tough times that we have faced.
It makes a good background for politics for the ranch. You might.
Now you're getting into politics.
Now you're getting into politics. But I used to be a Democrat, and it hurts me to be a Republican because the Democrats give the farmers more money. But what I think is right, and that's what we got to do is do what the country needs. The main thing is education.
That's the main thing, is growing. You know, grow with the times. You know, not standing still. Improve every year, improve every day. That's us. Just be positive.
While the old order passes, newcomers want the Texan and the American dream to come true for them for the first time. The Tex-Mex border stretches over a distance of 1,254 miles. This is Laredo, a border town between Mexico and South Texas.
Even during the colonial times, Laredo was a frontier, and it still is today. We're having a continuous stream of immigrants replacing those that are blending into the culture. So when you go into downtown Laredo, you'll find people like myself whose ancestors go back to the Spaniards, and you'll also find people who just got to this country 2 weeks ago, and they'll be working at the same store.
Here are two examples of precisely that. Julio, a Texan-born Hispanic, and Jose, a former Mexican citizen. They're Border Patrol guards for Zapata County, an 80-mile stretch of the Texas border. They're part of America's Homeland Security, and they're on the watch for illegal aliens, wetbacks, as Texans call them, because they splash across the Rio Grande.
This is what we call a cove, right? They come in from the Mexican side on their little boats, they drive into here, and this is how they get as far inland as possible to either have a vehicle waiting or something like that, and that's where they do their alien smuggling and their drug smuggling.
So it's people and narcotics that they're moving?
Yes.
What was your last haul in this area?
A few months back.
What do you get?
Narcotics.
Narcotics. How do you feel about your job?
It's an honorable job. We have a lot of prestige in our job. You know, we take our job very seriously.
I've got a sneaking suspicion that I'm part of a Border Patrol PR job. It seems that this patrol is seriously under-resourced.
You don't seem very heavily armed.
We have...
You have a sidearm?
Sidearms. We have the long rifle, and we have backup.
And you have backup. Is this the fastest boat in the business? Is there anything that can outrun you?
Oh, definitely they outrun us.
When I look over to the Mexican side, I don't see any patrols.
No, there's nothing out there.
Why do you think that is? They just leave it to you?
They don't have the means to do the operations that we do.
Or maybe the motive?
Or, I don't know about that.
In letting me out on this patrol, the Department of Homeland Security forgot one thing. If this film is transmitted in Mexico, and wannabe Texans see just how lax the security here is, they'll soon be mustering in Zapata County. Every year, 500,000 illegals cross the U.S. border, and the government appears powerless to stop them. Hang about, I think we've got one. Turns out our quarry isn't a wetback, just an Anglo-angler, looking to hook the big one and demonstrating just how easy it is to outrun America's frontline defense.
It's nice to see the water in the lake again. Yeah, it sure is.
Take care.
Most Texans are reconciled to the growing Hispanic population. But there remains a small, vociferous anti-immigration faction. They love guns as much as they hate the government. I'm here at the public firing range with Jimmy Ritter.
Illegal immigration is a serious problem. The frustration can be great, like at the border where we don't seem to do anything to stop illegal immigrants.
Jimmy's a member of Ranch Rescue, a group of vigilantes who offer voluntary protection to ranchers at the border. They've recently been in trouble with the law for allegedly menacing illegals.
Well, Hitch, I got involved with Ranch Rescue a while back. I was studying on the immigration issue. So, you know, here in Texas and all along the border, there's just large numbers of illegal immigrants coming across the border. Well, I have some friends down there, and the immigrants would come across in such massive waves, they just crawl over your fence, the rancher's fence. And so I started going down there to help repair fences and things like that. The whole idea wasn't about stopping immigrants. It's merely about private property rights and helping these ranchers repair their fences, because their cows get out.
I mean, I live out here obviously because I married my husband, and he's a Texan. And as you can tell, I have a New Zealand accent. I immigrated here many years ago. And we're right in the middle of our ranch in deep South Texas. And this is a pretty dangerous situation we're in at the moment because, you know, at any moment you could have illegals coming across. We carry weapons at all times. As you can see, I have my pistol on me at the moment. It's a .45. It's chambered with talons, and what talons are is they're a special type of bullet that will penetrate a bulletproof vest. So that when I come across illegals that do have bulletproof vests on, I'm capable of neutralizing them.
What about the forces of law and order? I mean, do they welcome your efforts? Do they think of you as a
Some do, but mostly they don't, because they know if they do, they'll become politically, how would you say, attacked.
tainted by association with...
Tainted by association.
With beer-guzzling rednecks.
Beer-guzzling rednecks, white boys from Arkansas, they'll call us.
You seem like a political kind of guy somehow. Maybe the T-shirt is tipping me off, I don't know.
We don't much care for the United Nations. As a matter of fact, we usually bring a United Nations flag out here and shoot at it. Just for fun, because, you know, we like to enjoy life.
We may all laugh at them, but Ranch Rescue arms these people and puts them in places where they can cause some serious harm.
We also have pump-action shotguns, we have Mini-14s, we have 8mm, we have 22 rifles, and we've got a sniper rifle with a scope. And we have several of each distributed throughout our house, on our person, and in our vehicles.
You find a lot of dead people along the road.
Yes, sir. They call them floaters in the river.
I feel angry that they're putting foreign citizens' rights and welfare and all the rest of it above United States citizens. I think that's not fair. Let's face it, we're the ones who pay taxes.
Here's what I think about government taking guns. Communists in Washington, D.C., who want to disarm the population. I don't know why they want to disarm the population. They don't take enough of my taxes, and they can't take any more until they take my gun, I guess. I don't know, but they're not nice people. Smith & Wesson, .45 caliber ACP, don't you know?
There's a lot of bumper stickers in Texas that say insured by Smith & Wesson. Now, don't honk at those people. Don't run them off the road. You know, I mean, if they're insured by Smith & Wesson, they're probably packing a heater, as we'd say in Texas. They're carrying an iron. They got a big iron.
As you can see, this weapon I have here, a defense weapon. Some people call this an assault weapon. It's a defense weapon. And with this, I can serve my community. My community can be protected. But of course, nowadays, they want to tell you that I'm some kind of nutball with a gun.
People in Texas have their own judgment on what's right and what's wrong. And when I was a young lawyer, I was asked judge appointed me to try a murder case. I was representing a guy that murdered somebody else. And so I represented him, and they paid $50 a day. And when the case was over, they found my guy not guilty. And one of the reasons they found him not guilty, the local sheriff, the law enforcement officer, testified that the deceased, Frank Robledo, was the sorriest man in the county, and he should have been shot. And the judge, when it was over, gave me, and I've kept this for 30 years, gave me the gun. It was a Saturday night special, and gave me this gun, and this shot old Frank Robledo and killed him, who the sheriff said needed killing. And the sheriff later told me that he had never seen an object that needed stealing, but he had seen a lot of people that needed killing.
The ranch rescue forces are bizarre, and they cut against the Texan grain. This state has always been Anglo-Mexican.
Got it. There we are.
The reputation of Texas, perhaps derived from the success of Dallas, the soap opera, is of a rich, vulgar state. In fact, its poverty and the whiteness of its poverty was legendary, at least until the days of LBJ, who brought water and power to many parts of the state for the very first time.
The reality of Laredo is that it's a very poor town because it's an immigrant town. 92% of people in Laredo speak Spanish at home. By the same token, Laredo is part of the American dream. Our kids go to school, they have good schools. Our kids go off to college. Whether you're a migrant kid or you're a rich kid, if you want to go to college, you can go. So Laredo is an engine of the growth in Texas and in the U.S.
These shanty towns look like scenes from the past, but they represent an important part of the Texan future.
You find them all along the border and on the edge of almost all towns, usually by the roadside. They're called colonias, improvised Mexican and Hispanic immigrant communities, sometimes with a haphazard connection to electricity, usually waiting for an upgrade to the water mains. Nobody really knows how many people of Spanish descent there are in Texas today. At any rate, it's estimated that by the year 2008, Spanish speakers will be the majority. No one's quite puzzled out the implications of a state where white and black Texans will be large minorities instead of a majority, but we're going to find out soon the relationship between demography and politics.
Hispanic Texans are becoming more politically engaged. Many of them are educated professionals with deep roots. These two, Julian and Joaquin Castro, are fourth-generation Texans, educated in the law schools of Harvard and Yale.
Today I'm a state representative. I represent part of San Antonio, Texas, and Juan represents San Antonio on the city council down there. Politically, I think the Hispanic community is very powerful and growing in power. Economically, I think that it still has a ways to go, and really that's going to be, in the next decade or two, the true measure of the success of Hispanics.
When I graduated from high school, my high school graduating class was 90% Anglo, 5% Hispanic, and 5% African American. Now when you go back, it's 70% Hispanic, 25% Anglo, and 5% African American. Today, if you sent all the illegal aliens back to Mexico and Central America, you would shut down the restaurant industry, the hotel industry, the construction industry, the maintenance industry in the state of Texas.
Texas needs its immigrants, and they're all potential voters. George Bush was early and shrewd in recognizing this Texan fact.
I'm a young Latino in the U.S. and very proud of my bloodline. In many ways, I'm like any other American. I believe in opportunity, a level playing field for everyone, and the achievement of the American dream. I have an uncle that is running for president because he believes in the same thing. Opportunity for every American, for every Latino. His name, same as mine, George Bush.
I'm proud of the Latino blood that flows in the Bush family.
I think that then Governor Bush and now President Bush courted the Hispanic vote through both substantive means and some gimmicks. For example, he'll speak a few words of garbled Spanish, and it's very symbolic.
El sueño americano es para ti.
And I think it worked partly well because Hispanics didn't expect that from a Republican. A lot of folks think that President Bush has made incredible inroads with the Hispanic community, and I think that for a Republican candidate, he did. He won a larger percentage of the Hispanic vote than any Republican had in the past. And I think one of the reasons is that he spent the most money, more money than anybody's ever spent to court Hispanics. But the other thing is that they didn't move over to the right. They didn't become more conservative, so to speak, to support him. He had to moderate to get their vote.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
Texas reflects this dual identity, in part by insisting that its schoolchildren pledge allegiance every day to the flag of Texas, as well as to the flag of the USA.
Honor the Texas flag.
This unique policy reconfirms Texas as a state with an individual character like no other.
Allegiance to thee, Texas, one and indivisible.
But there remains the question, how stable and how durable is this identity?
If you were driving through California or Virginia, you might see a bumper sticker saying, I brake for animals, or even practice random acts of beauty. But if you're driving through Texas, this is what you're going to get. As a concession to people from out of state, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could. American by birth, Texan by the grace of God is extremely eloquent, I think you'll have to agree. And don't mess with Texas, often associated with the state's fondness for capital punishment, is actually originally an anti-litter slogan. But in Texas, even a green slogan for keeping the country beautiful can become an occasion to be brash and macho. And then when you get to the license plate, not just the lone horseman and the oil rigs, but also the magnificent figure of the space shuttle. Still, it sometimes makes me wonder, if the Texans are so all-fired confident in themselves, why do they keep on having to prove it all the time?
This kind of assertiveness reminds me of Bible thumping, another well-known cure for self-doubt. To test my suspicion, I turned to a veteran Texas author, John Graves. His memoir, Goodbye to a River, is a classic of Lone Star melancholy.
I mean, a lot of people fall in love with the idea of being a Texan, and they act like they think a Texan ought to act like, which is unfortunately often loud-mouthed and crude.
This Anglo-Scottish pioneering conquest of Texas would not have been possible, it seems to me, unless it had a lot of religion in it.
It was a driving force. Of course, it's still there, but it doesn't have no place to go now. They brought a Calvinist form of religion down here, which sustained them and enabled them to live as hard as they did. It has waned now, except that it's crystallized, of course, in the extreme right-wing Protestantism. I think religion of one kind or the other is still holding people together. Wish I lived in a world where it was possible to be religious and think at the same time.
I pressed on to see another of Texas's intellectual skeptics. In Archer City, a West Texas town of 1,500 souls, Larry McMurtry has created an improbable book town with 4 major outlets and perhaps 500,000 warehoused volumes.
There used to be bookshops larger than us in just about every American city. You know, in Boston, New York, all the way across to L.A.
McMurtry is most celebrated outside the state for his Western epic novel, Lonesome Dove, and for the screen adaptation of The Last Picture Show, an elegy for the expiring Texas small town.
A lot of people are surprised to find how many great literary holdings are possessed by the University of Texas.
Dr. Harry Ransom was a very far-sighted professor, and he began to buy the archives of English writers, particularly 20th century English writers, you know, as much Joyce, as much Lawrence, as much Virginia Woolf. That's a source of pride.
You are thought of by some people as a writer about the cowboy.
Yeah, I'm thought of as a writer about, although I've been denouncing cowboys and calling them fascists and doing everything I can to get away from being a writer about the cowboy, but somehow it draws me back because it's such a Central American image, a Central American Western type. You gotta deal with the cowboy one way or another.
Larry once wrote,
I now think a lot of my writing about the cowboy was an attempt to understand my father's essentially tragic take on his own human experience. He'd attached his heart to a hopeless ideal, a 19th century vision of cowboying. The sense of that crack in reality between what is and what might be, my father passed on to me. It may be the crack where books and songs are born.
We want to welcome you to the Hill Country Republican Women's Auction. I think we're ready to start bidding, so get those hands ready to raise.
My name is Don Laux. I'm a county commissioner out in Bastrop County. I was the first Republican ever elected out there. I'm up for re-election next year.
banishing all uncheery thoughts, the Republican Ladies Auxiliary gets together to brandish pictures of their latest favorite president.
Bidding the first item. The first item that's up for bid is a personally signed book of Governor Bush's speeches.
Surely everyone's got one of those ordered.
What's the bid? What's the starting bid? $20. I hear $20.
It can be surprising to remember how recently Texas was a state which more or less belonged to the Democrats. At this and other fiestas, the grand old party hopes to complete the Republicanization of Texan politics and society.
Come on, this is personally signed by the president.
Underneath this bravado, there is, as so often in Texas, a note of uncertainty.
Come on, folks, you know this is a good cause. These things are going for cheap.
Going for cheap has its own tone of sadness and even of desperation. Texas has traded on the cowboy ethic for so long that even a visiting Englishman can impersonate a cowboy for a day. The president and his advisors may hope to extend their conquest of Texas to create a national Republican majority, but to most Americans the word cowboy is just as incongruous as it is to most Europeans. Though it may seem that cowboyism has been exported globally, here in Texas it is facing extinction. Perhaps that explains its everlasting and partly tragic appeal. The wilderness may have been suburbanized, but there is no conquering the wasteland within.